Hello, my lovely friends. Welcome to another episode of the Bag Lady Show. We're so happy that you joined us again this evening. And we're all about sharing compassion, giving back, encouraging you to do the very same thing. And I want to introduce again, always, my beautiful co host, my daughter Shauna. Take it
Hello, hello,
away.
hello.
Why are we wearing these hats?
Well, why wouldn't we be wearing these hats? I mean, it's National Tortilla Chip Day.
La cucaracha,
La cucaracha. La
la la la la la la la
cucaracha.
la. Okay.
Right, yes. So we will be cooking today, cooking with kids and doing some fun little things with our tortilla chips. So
Si,
we wanted to
señorita.
get everybody in the mood for National Tortilla Chip Day.
Sounds good to me. And we got a great interview coming up.
Man, I'll tell you what, Susan Rickman, the CEO of the World Pediatric Project,
Awesome lady.
man, amazing, incredible stuff that she has to share.
And so we're going to break away right now to a great interview with Susan Rickman.
Awesome. Enjoy.
Welcome to another segment of the Bag Ladies Show. And today we have one of my mom's high school friends, Susan Rickman. And I heard you two used to be cheerleaders together, homegirls. Welcome, Susan.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a
It's-
pleasure. And yes, few years ago.
Way too many. Back in the 70s, yikes, that means we wore bell bottoms.
That's right. That's right. And I'll
Right.
never forget the day that I graduated and my mother looking at me and saying, "I never want to see Kelly Green on you again."
Yes.
We
Yes.
lived in our uniforms.
I know. And
Oh my
Kelly
gosh.
Green was our school colors. Were
Yeah.
believe
Yes.
it or not. Oh my goodness. We were a bunch of goofy kids. A bunch of
Yes.
goofy girls. We had a great time though.
A bunch of goofy girls who have done a lot from a little town called Farmington, New Mexico. My goodness.
Very, very proud of our roots.
Yes, yes. And we're just a little bit of back information. Susan, for 20 years, headed up the World Pediatric Project. Just incredible. But we're going to talk about that in just a minute. I want to peel back a little bit so people really know a little bit more about your life. I know just from high school. I don't know anything before that, and I don't know very much after that. So just share a little bit maybe about your early childhood
Yeah.
and
Well, I always say I was born and raised in New Mexico, which is not true. I was born in Kansas, but we were there for like 6 months and then we went on to New Mexico. So to me, New Mexico, I feel so privileged to say that's where I grew up, where I'm from. But most of my all younger years were in Albuquerque. We were there. And then my dad had got transferred up to Farmington to open up a business there. And so we moved to Farmington in, I guess it was my 7th grade year. And of course,
okay.
went to Hermosa Junior High. And, that was it, and stayed there until I graduated. And I actually left 2 days after graduation of high school to come out to Richmond, Virginia. And it was literally to come out for a 2-week visit. And I came out, never been east of Oklahoma, and got out on the East Coast and just started having an amazing time and fun. And then I thought, well, I got to get back to college, but I'm going to extend it for another 6 months and stay out here and just really, Washington, D.C. and just the East Coast, just experiencing it was just so different from being in the Southwest. And then as things go, I met a man and that became, my husband for 34 years. And he passed away in 11, excuse me, and had a daughter, and then just ended up staying in Richmond, and then ended up then getting into university. So I kind of got into the whole university thing a little bit later in life, even though I had her young. It was soon after she was born. Well, I guess it's about she was 3 years old, and then I started getting back into university. And I kind of always knew what I wanted to do. I knew it wanted to be something international, and so that was the route that I followed through that in graduate school.
Wow. And I never, I never would have guessed this. She's model gorgeous and still is. But I want to go back just a little bit to Farmington.
Yeah.
because we live on the edge of the Navajo reservation, which is a third world country.
Yeah.
And
Very
you
much
mentioned
so.
that in some of your biographical information.
Yeah.
And of course, I grew up in the same situation. And I want to just give the audience a little perspective of your perspective of growing up here in the US, but right on our border, living in with the Navajo people, and how that affected you as well, and maybe even impacted what you did later on.
Yeah, it was very influential, and people who don't live in the South, around reservations really can't conceive or understand. I mean, when we say border, it was like it was a border. It was like another country. I mean, we had some Navajos that went to our high school, but not many. I mean, they were on the reservations. They went to their schools there. You know, definitely racism issues between the Navajos and the whites, and the jokes and all that were told. And I can remember when that all happened, it was disturbing to me to know that, that was going on. Really, I don't know. It was just hurtful to see that. And yet it permeated the society. And I was fortunate that I had a mother that we didn't have a lot of money. So anytime there was some kind of festival that the Indians were putting on wherever, I mean, we were dragged there. We were there. So I felt like it really, the culture and seeing it was a part of my life, that we did go do that stuff. And, and it always just amazed me. I mean, I found them fascinating. So I think I just knew at that time that when I saw the disparity between and the lack of access to things, that I always knew that there, and maybe if I'd have stayed out there, I don't know, went to school, University of Mexico, whatever, maybe that's the direction I would have gone. But then coming out to the East Coast, doing university out here, it just became an international thing for me, because it was a very international feel of that culture and all the way. I mean, it was a totally different language. I mean, Ronna, you remember, we'd get off. I mean, your daughter's not going to believe this, but I mean, we'd literally get off from high school and we had one radio station for rock and roll music. And I think it was at 4 o'clock, it changed over to a Navajo. And then immediately we lost our music until later on at night. What was it, like 8 o'clock, Ronna, that we could get
KOMA out of
KOMA, Oklahoma City. That far. I mean, 800 miles away, that we finally picked up rock and roll music. So, we even had that, that kind of like disrupted our lives during the day, that it was, it was a totally different language, that it was not like Spanish coming on that you could pick up and understand and whatever. I mean, this is not even a written language, especially at that time. So it was very impactful and influential, I think, on me.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I grew up with the same concerns, and it just didn't make sense to me, the way that everyone treated each other. And it took us going halfway across the world to Africa to really realize, okay, we have a third world country in our own backyard.
Wasn't a lot different, was it?
No, there's so many similarities.
No.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And really their own government, their own, their own president of the Navajo. I mean, all those kinds of things that I said is, when I try to explain to people, when I say I grew up on the border of the Navajo, I'm talking, there was a border. You couldn't see it, but it was just definitely there.
Sure.
A division.
And that's great that your mom showed you that culture at a young age. I think that's beautiful, because I'm just now getting into the Dene culture and doing sweat lodges and learning, and it's beautiful.
No, it is. Well, I mean, it just opened your mind to so many things. I mean, you really lose out. You just so lose out when you don't see and observe and take part into, I always kind of like feel sorry for people. Or when they say that they've been to a certain country and then you hear it's on a cruise ship, and it's like, well, then you really didn't go to
experience it.
Yeah, you didn't go to Jamaica. You didn't go up to the Blue Mountains and see their culture and understand their food and their language that you really can't understand either, because it's like a Creole language that they do. And it's like, do you not think you've been to a country if you've been protected or gone to a resort? It's almost kind of, why don't you just go to Florida?
Great point.
That's really great. So you went to university in international studies, or?
Yeah. So my degree was international studies, international affairs, and then political science, which was mostly all international. It was mostly Latin America is what I focused on. I at the time when I went, I thought I really wanted to focus on Middle East,
Okay.
but I had a university that didn't specialize in that. So I thought I've really got to go with what I got to go with.
Okay,
And
sure.
their Latin America and all of that was pretty strong. So I took off in that direction. And sort of when you first go, in my mind, I thought it was going to be, UNICEF or something, a big IGO that I'd go working for and all. And then as I started doing internships and all that, it really, it's where I learned to be small and mighty, as you know, Ronna, that when getting with those big international government organizations, there's so much bureaucracy, it's so much, it just was kind of like disappointing. And then I actually got with the Christian Children's Fund that I was with for a while, which again, then that was a very large non-governmental organization. And I felt the same thing. I felt like there was just the hierarchy and just the red tape you had to get through. And so I found my little niche with kind of with the smaller NGOs that just go in and on that very grassroots level, go in and just try and move the needle.
And those organizations are really the ones that are impactful because they work on the local level
Yeah,
with
they do.
people. And again, the bureaucracy, when we go to Kenya, we can do anything because of the fact that we've been there, of course, for 20 years, but also we're not working with a large organization. We're just working directly with our partners there on the ground, with the local people. And you see a lot more impact and the dollar really stretches a lot more and the help really stretches. So after you began to work with smaller NGOs, then how did this eventually parlay into you getting involved, or really, I think you were kind of in on the ground floor of World Pediatric.
I put the keys in the door.
Right.
So I was with a smaller organization and had been working in Southeast Asia on child sex and tourism. So I did a project over there, and then I got Africa. So and that was the former Portuguese colony. So we got a large Portuguese grant. So of course, when you finally get Africa and international development, that's like the crown to get in to do that. So I was very excited about it, and so the part of the contract was that we had to start with the smallest population country. So Cape Verde Islands off the coast of West Africa was like the first country, and then Sao Tome Principe, and then Mozambique was the next. And that goal of that children's organization was kind of looking at the World Summit for Children and all the goals that these countries, 180 countries, had signed on to of what they wanted to achieve. And this organization went in to say, okay, where are you falling short on achieving your goals? And kind of prioritizing and then helping that. So like Cape Verde was early childhood development. So it was not health. We really didn't do that much in health. Well, that's not true because I did two big programs on HIV/AIDS, but it was more focused on other things and all. And there was a Rotary Club in Richmond, Virginia, that had been doing a project in Guyana, South America, but it was a dental project. And they were going down there, and as they were down there doing dental, then mothers would come up to them and say, but I've been told my child has a hole in my heart and all. And they're like, oh, we're dentists, we don't know. And so this really incredible man just came back and just said, I mean, as far as he's concerned, God spoke to him and said, someone has to do something. These kids have no access to surgery. So at that point, they kind of formed a little board to say, all right, we're going to start an organization that we're going to bring children from all over the world to come to the United States and have surgery and all. So they had approached me at that time because they knew of me and to see if I was interested. But, I was in Africa, and it was like I was going back and forth. And I just said, well, I'll help you. I'll serve as a consultant and all. And then I always say I had my epiphany when I was in Cape Verde, and we went to the hospital, and it was really, and my boss was amazing. I mean, this man, I always say that he gave me my PhD in international development because he was world renowned. And I worked with him at Christian Children's Fund. He retired from there and started this small organization because he wanted to be more pinpointed what he was doing, and he hired me. So I went from like number 210th in line to him to number 2.
Wow.
With this man, and it was just amazing. And I'd go to Geneva, the World Health Organization, and all I had to do was drop his name, and I was into any doors and sitting at any table, and mostly in those years listening because I knew I had so much to learn. But anyway, it was just an incredible opportunity to have done it with him. So it was Dr. Paul McCleary who said, let's just go by the hospital and see. And it was kind of more, maybe we can load a container up and bring them stuff and all. And so we went over to this very, very third world hospital, and went in and went to the pediatric ward. And there's kids running around and some kids that were in their beds, but there was this little girl that was sitting and looking at this old little TV on a little TV tray, just all by herself. And she was probably about 11 years old. And she looked like she was about 8 months pregnant. And I knew it was incest, it was rape, it was something. And I thought, just focus on what we're here for. But I kept looking over her little eyes were just staring at me, very sad, but very telling in these eyes of just looking at me. And so finally I couldn't stand it. And I looked at the doctors, and they were Cuban doctors that were there running the hospital. And I said, can I ask what's wrong with that little girl over there? And they said, it's a stomach tumor, which it was huge.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at them and I said, not knowing really, surgical care was not anything that I had really had any background in. I just looked at them and was like, well, what are you doing? And they said, oh, well, we don't have that expertise. We can't, she's just waiting. And I knew what that meant. She's waiting to die. And so it was at that moment where I knew she was looking at me and she goes, are you the one? Here I am, white, blonde. I mean, this person that's really standing out for her to think, are you it that's going to help me?
Wow.
And so I just always said that was my epiphany to kind of changing the direction I was going, because I knew on a 3-hour flight to Lisbon, Portugal, to Madrid, Spain, to France, they could take care of this little girl. And yet they had, no expertise in setting up those relationships or whatever. And they were accustomed to children dying. I mean, it's really, when you get in these countries, it's like no access to surgery is like, hey, generations, we're used to that. Those resources aren't available. So that's when I came back and then, picked up the phone and called them. I said, I think I'm ready to sit down and talk with you about this.
Wow.
So I was the first at that time, was called executive director, to really literally put the keys in the door. And I started out with me and a part-time bookkeeper. And when I retired, we were up to about 50 employees at that point, international offices and a St. Louis office and our Richmond office and all.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's incredible.
just-
Beautiful story. And it always seems to start with something like that. I remember the first time, actually the second time I went to Africa, my mom went on her first team over there, and there was a little girl that I played with all day. And I actually ended up staying the night at the orphanage, and we would lay in bed, and she wanted me to sleep with her. And every time we moved, she would just make me hold her all night long, just hold her and hold her. And there's always these little stories that just pull us and touch our hearts. So the World Pediatric Project, what do you do exactly? What are the things that it sounds, can you explain more?
So the sole mission was really to be completely highly focused on surgical care. So just become very special, not letting ourselves go off into malaria, HIV. We were in surgical care, so just really become highly specialized in that. So it was kind of developing those healthcare systems in partnership with our countries, we had 12 partner countries that we worked into, is how we can set up that we can empower them, we can educate them, and in the meantime, take care of these kids. So last year, before COVID hit, I mean, we had 52 surgical and diagnostic teams that were going into our country. So we were one of the biggest in the United States. That was
volunteer team?
All volunteer.
Wow.
All volunteer. We had a 97% retention rate of our team. So it was the exact same teams, the same nurses, the same everything that went every single year, which was incredibly important, almost the same week every year. So, I mean, every month we could have 10 teams going out, and these are surgical teams. So that was a huge, getting the shipments out 2 months in advance for them to get there for all the surgical supplies, and, the database to pull up the kids and all the kids to be ready and the parents to be ready. And then the hospital there, I mean, our government hospitals that we work with there to have them, prepared and all, and the OR set up for us to be there and all. So most of the kids that we took care of were in country, and we had 15 subspecialties. We didn't want to specialize in one thing because we knew that there was the need across the board. There were no pediatric specialists in most of these countries. So we just, we did open heart surgeries in some of our countries. So so we set out to do that, but then setting up the mechanism in the United States when there was a child that just needed more advanced post-op care
Technology.
or equipment and all that wasn't there, that then we could bring those kids up to the United States. And so we about 100 to 110 kids a year would come up, and we had about 22 hospitals across the United States that we had agreements with.
And
So
And
you
we
had,
just-
so you had where you went out to different countries, but then also in cases where, hey, they just can't handle it.
Yeah.
Then you would come to the
We
US.
would bring them up, and then they would
Bring
just
them
get into the pipeline,
Okay.
and we would work with the embassies down there to get the visas, and then we worked through another organization to get all the airline tickets taken care of. So then the kids would come up, and we had housing set up, mostly Ronald McDonald houses or
Yeah.
other housing institutions that we would partner with, that they would come up. And some of our orthopedic cases, which most of those went to the Shriners hospitals that we had partnerships with, those cases could be very long. They could be 12 months that the mother and child would have to leave and come up, where our open heart surgery cases would sometimes be 8 weeks, and they'd be here and gone, back home. So it really kind of depended. We even, separated conjoined twins at one point.
Oh, wow.
And so anyway, but we knew that the most bang for our buck was to do it in countries. And then that gave the opportunity for working with their nurses and their doctors and their diagnosticians and all, to further train them in the area of pediatrics, where most of them, just because of the sheer nature of that they have to be, they're just generalist. These countries, especially, we were in Central America and the Caribbean, but when you get down into those Caribbean islands, they can't afford to have a pediatric urologist. And there's not enough cases to do, so they couldn't do that. So it would be all generalists. Most generalists do not want to look at a 1-year-old baby on the operating table.
Oh
They just don't. And you sometimes, God love them, they'll try and don't have a good outcome because they're used to a 50-year-old man laying there. Or they just won't do it. They just say, I'm not trained in that, and I'm not going to do it, which means then the child or the baby just receives nothing.
And what's so interesting is I was thinking about this little boy, and he had fallen and hurt his knee. And when we got out to the village, his knee was just huge. And they asked us, do you have some medicine? I had some essential oils that I was massaging the mamas with and their feet. And they said, we have a little boy. He needs your help. He needs your medicine. And he had a big, huge swollen knee. So we got him on the little motorcycle and we took him in. And for $5, he got antibiotics and saved that knee. However, there's so many kids out there, he would have needed that amputated. So for our listeners, it's not as easy and cut and dry as it may seem. Even the littlest things can turn into big, huge operations for these children and people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And
how many, oh, go ahead. I was just going to ask you how many countries you went to.
So we had 12 that we had partnerships with. So, literally at the Ministry of Health level. So where we were a little different from what you guys do, which I can be very envious sometimes of what you guys do, is we were doing surgery and we were going into government hospitals. So we had to be connected at the hip with the ministries of health. And so, pretty intense agreements and contracts and all that were signed of our expectations from them and their expectations from us. So, and then with the hospitals, agreements with the hospitals and how we're going to do that, because that was the other thing. You had to, really be careful, because when you're going in there, you're displacing the local surgeons, because we're taking over an operating theater, sometimes 2 operating theaters. But so I always said it was like taking the bricks down to build that trust. And it takes years. It takes years to build trust. And they're used to NGOs coming in and not staying. NGOs come, they find out it's really hard, or all of a sudden another country, someone else says, come here, and they take off and leave. So you will find, which I'm sure you guys already know, there's a lot of distrust of US, and I'm sure other countries, but US NGOs, that great, you say you're here to help us, but we'll see how long you stay. And so that was incredibly important to me, to really build that trust and do whatever I needed to do. And building trust with local doctors and surgeons is hard, because you're also telling the country that they can't do it. So that sets up things. And I was always with my doctors, I said, if the press ever comes around, remove yourself, let the doctors that you partner with, they're the ones that go and talk to the press, because all you're going to do is put bricks up on the wall for me to have to take down. If all of a sudden it's the great white American that is in the newspaper and splashed all over everything, that that it was just not a good thing to do, and it wasn't necessary.
So many, what I'm hearing is, my goodness, so many logistics.
Yes.
I mean, people had no idea all the details that
Yeah,
went
no, it's the
every.
logistics are
Oh,
enormous. I mean,
and
when you're
you didn't have a manual that said, how do I
No.
do this.com.
yeah,
You
no,
had to
no.
just figure it out as you went along.
You did. It was which one thing I loved about it was very entrepreneurial. It was not like doing a malaria program, which you took the little model off the shelf, opened it up, and realized, okay, this is how many malaria nets you'd have to do for this many people and all. It's not. It was a very different, and we wanted to do it the right way. We just didn't want to send a team down, do it, hopefully get them down there next year, or have them go in the fall next year, maybe, because the team said, no, we want to go in the spring. Where we told them, it's like, when you commit, you're committing for the long term. And I've had surgeons that I had to uninvite because they say they would commit, and the next year it's like, nope, I can't this year, but I'll try to next year, whatever. And I had a Johns Hopkins heart surgeon that was awesome. I love this man, but it's like, I'm sorry, I'll have to move on. These are people that we're trying to find, that this is a life commitment that they're doing. And we had 250 of them that it was an absolute life commitment. They couldn't wait until, and they were so involved in between the year. I mean, getting ready for the cases, knowing that, they got to where they knew the kids, they knew the doctors, and then the doctors would talk in between from the countries with our surgeons, just consulting on certain cases. And that was the other thing, is like developing those relationships were so important.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. If it's a passion of yours and you're gung-ho, you're going to be amazing at it. If it's not something that you're really into, we have good doctors, good teachers, and we have those that just, it's
Get
not
by.
their passion, and that's okay. That's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It is okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. And thank you for, what you've,
Absolutely.
we're going to, and it was really important to us too, that we funded all of the travel for our doctors and nurses and everything they did. We had travel insurance for them and everything, but we felt that was important because they needed to know they were going as World Pediatric Project teams, which means there are certain criteria and certain ethics and certain everything that you will be following, and requirements from you on the cases, so all of the information we needed to do to go into the database to follow this child until they were 21. So, you have, we'd run into these surgical teams or hear about them that would go down, and because they knew they're giving up a week of their life, they've raised the money to pay for their airline tickets, get everybody down there. It's like, don't make me do paperwork. That's what I do at home. That's what I do at home. By God, I'm just going to come for a week and I'm going to help. And it's at the end of the week. Yes, you did. You helped. But you left no information for that family. You left nothing for the government. You left nothing for the local doctors for them to follow up and all. And so, we even had some of our doctors that had traveled on their own or whatever to say, I really look back now and just kind of shudder on how we used to do it and realize this is the right way to do it. But it was because we had this machine behind them, the staff and all that became really experts in what they were doing to make it done the right way.
Do you all have the same frustration that we have? And one of them is you have to spend so much time fundraising, and sometimes you feel like all we're doing is fundraising, and we're not getting to do as many projects. But that's just the reality of a nonprofit, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And then, of course, because our size got bigger, then we literally had a development team that did it. And then, of course, it still was a big part of my responsibility. But I was a program person. That's where I came from. So development was not my first love in any shape or form. But I was the face of the organization. So to put me in front of people and whatever, I did that all day long. I had to do that. But we just got fortunate at some point that then we could literally afford that staff that did nothing but every single day walk into the office, and that's all they did was development.
And
so,
raising funds.
Oh yeah. And getting out to foundations and all that. And it's special events and all that kind of stuff. It's hard. And then it's like, then you start all over to do it again the next year.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge. Speaking of, what were the biggest challenges that you faced? in the whole thing?
I think well, I think one of the biggest challenges, but probably was one of the greatest enjoyments that I had too, and that was building the trust for them to realize that we were, we were going to come back. The other challenges was being prepared for the what if,
Oh,
because when you have volunteers that are working for you, and these are very high-end volunteers, these are surgeons that are responsible for, some university hospitals and all that, that kind of fear of what if anything happens. And I think we put
yeah.
so many protocols in place and so much stuff that after 20 years, we never had one mishap. And so I think that was a great challenge, just to make sure that you had all of those things in place to make sure that everybody stayed safe and all, and just working in another hospital and all, and just feeling highly responsible for the people that were giving up their time to do what they do. And then the mothers that trusted us. I mean, that was the other thing, the government that trusted us, I mean, they put their trust into us. And so it had to be, and we interview our doctors. It didn't matter if they came from Texas Children. When we did a background check on them, they had to have letters of references and all that, that was really critically important to us.
Yeah.
But and I think challenges is because we were kind of an uncharted territory. So that just being the challenge of gosh, when you look at going into a country like the size of Guatemala of 12, 13 million people, it's like, okay, now how do we address? It's different from addressing surgical care in a country like that as versus a small Caribbean island where you can really feel like you can put your arm around the problem to say, it'll probably take us these many years to take care of the backlog and do what we do. But then when you start looking at those really big countries, and then where it's so diverse in their healthcare system alone, there's no central person really to talk to, was a real challenge to do. So kind of biting off what it was you could chew and do it right, do the right thing. And then not, I told the board from the very beginning, I said, we're going to be about depth, not breadth. And I said, I don't care about having pins on a global map of us being in a lot of, I said, I work for an organization that was the big thing. We're in 42 countries. And yet I knew about 20 of those countries what that really meant. And it's like that pin probably really shouldn't be there. And I thought that to me was just so important, that we're going to be in depth and we're going to be there for the long term into these countries for them to know that.
You bring up such a good point of trust, because America and other countries, we go in, we come out, that trust is so hard. We've talked about quote unquote poverty porn. People go over, they get to take their pictures, they get to post them on Facebook and Instagram, and look what I did. Well, it's great because it does change their life and when they go over, but that creates chaos for the countries and no trust that we're ever coming back. And it's not a good way to be. So it's great that you were able to build that. That's not easy.
It's really not. And it's interesting, we talk about relationships, but in life, period, it's all about relationships. And
it is.
you say that doesn't happen overnight. And I remember in starting my work, I thought at first, I'm going to be all over Africa. That's I want to do stuff in all those countries. And I thought, no, that's too big. And then we narrowed it down to Kenya. And even Kenya was that's big.
Huge.
So then our really pilot project is in an area of about 300,000 people. And we've invested our lives in those 300,000 people. And really the impact is so much more than
it is.
Just put our little toes in the water here and a little bit over here. And again, no relationships built. And there's just much more impact. In other words, less is more. It really is. Less is more.
Well, and it's measurable. You can start to measure your impact and say that you're not, as we call, shotgun development, when you're just splattered all over the place. And again, because you put a pin on a map and all, you can't measure what you do that way, because there again, you don't know the sources there. You don't know, to get that data baseline of what you need to compare it to, it takes years to be in a place to do that.
Yes. And speaking of impact, about how many children over your 20 years?
Well, so probably Yeah. So close to 20,000 that have
Oh,
gone into the database. And
wow.
that's, well, it's funny because you say that because I remember working on malaria and all those kinds of things. I mean, the numbers were so much bigger, but it always kind of brought it back down to this was surgical care or diagnostic care. So I
Much
mean, the
more
numbers
intense.
were just, yeah.
Yeah, much more intense. And I'd never heard actually of a CEO that did surgeries until I really got into looking at yours. That's not something that a lot of NGOs do. Like you say, it's a
Yeah.
malaria or it's HIV AIDS
Yeah.
or it's food or nutrition or things. But how important is it to give children these surgeries? I mean, talk about that. I mean, the life
Well, so you
changing
just mentioned,
generationally.
yeah, well, look, you also mentioned malaria, HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis. Well, those are all things that have been in our minds and that we've seen, and wonderful people like Bill Gates and all those have been really focused on those. Well, you can combine all three of those diseases, and more children die from lack of surgical access than all of those three diseases
Wow.
combined. So that's how big it is. And
Wow.
probably about 2016 is when all of a sudden the global attention started getting put on
Mhm.
this lack of surgical care, and then a lot of universities like Harvard and Yale and University of California, San Francisco started putting some emphasis with their training programs and going out. A lot of them are in Africa, doing programs there and all. So it was good, but it's like, well, at that point we'd had already 16 years of experience in doing what we were doing. So at that point, it's like, kind of wanting that place at the table to talk about people, because academia and development is a very interesting combination of, and while they do get in the field, it's generally very short periods of time that they're in the field. And I thought, we're in the field 12 months a year with boots on the ground, doing offices there and all, that you really need to hear, what we've experienced and what we've seen and how we've built, and how we need to hear from academia on better ways that we can do. So it's just in the last few years that there's been a little bit of that combination of coming together, which the retirement thing was a little sad for me in that, because it was just like finally after almost 20 years that was starting to kind of get together. But I mean, it's when you talk about a child, so about the knee, an orthopedic knee, if it's not corrected, it'll work. We've dealt with children. One of the things that we did a lot of surgeries in was called Blount's disease, which is severe bowing of the legs, severe bowing of the legs. And I'm sure Africa will have a lot of it. But talking to the parents and all, they would go to their local school to say, could we change, would you change her class to the bottom floor?
Oh,
Because for her to go up the stairs was like so miserable. It was hurt and whatever. And generally they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't accommodate. There was no, nothing to take care of handicapped people. The streets weren't set up to take care of handicapped people. There were no, the buildings and all of that. So you always thought that, to me, orthopedic was as big to me as a heart surgery, because
yes.
I just knew. And the whole thing of, we always kind of said, the surgeries can help a child live or have a more productive life. Well, it's really, it just, you're helping them live, because again, if you can't get a job and you become disenfranchised from the rest of things in school, you can't go to school and all that, it's not going to be a good life in these
That's right.
countries
That's
in,
right.
in most ways.
And I think
So
I read something like $200 million that your organization has put into all those surgeries. And of course, that's not counting volunteer hours. Can you imagine
yeah,
if you put a price tag on that? But what an incredible thing. I mean, a little gal from
yeah,
Farmington, and you just did it grassroots. You didn't have a
yeah,
manual, and you just went out there and did it. And what a life-changing thing to be a part of something like that. And I know you feel the same way that we do. Is, all of our volunteers and people that we work with will always say, we go there to help, but we're the ones that always walk away with the biggest blessing
yeah.
too.
Oh my God.
And I know your life, you can't imagine your life without having this experience.
No,
And
it's the
and
best bottom line. I mean, I didn't work for a company to help their bottom line because to sell the most
Right.
widgets and all. I mean, no, it is absolutely the best bottom line that I can imagine.
yes.
I can't
And
imagine a different life.
no. And that's one of the things that we want our show to show people is that, listen, there's real purpose in life in serving other people and finding your gift and serving. And there's just nothing like it. You lose your life. It costs you everything. You know,
Yeah,
you gave 24/7 to this. And I know there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but you can't measure though what you get from it. And I want you
you
to
can't.
share maybe just a couple of stories of ones that just have stuck with you of surgeries that were done and how it impacted.
Well, so one of the first cases that we took from St. Vincent and the Grenadines was a little baby that was born with a bladder on the outside of her body. So she had extrophy of the bladder, and it's literally was on the outside of the body. We had gone there, started making contact with the country and thinking that we would, probably help them. Well, we got a call one day saying, "Oh my God, we got this child. Can you help?" And when they told me about the bladder on the outside of the body, I thought, how do we get this child? We weren't set up for teams to go down there yet. And I thought, I just couldn't imagine what that must be like and how you keep infection out and whatever. So the pediatrician down there that I was talking to, and she said, "Oh, Susan," she goes, they called me into the maternity when had given birth to Shalisa was her name. And she went in and she goes, "My heart just sunk." And so she said, I had to tell her mother, Lucy, that there was nothing we could do. And so telling her mother, and she says, but there's got to be something. And she says, well, the only way that could really help the child is she would have to go someplace else. And we just don't have that. We just don't have. And so the mother said, "Oh, no, 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 no." She says, "I'll sell my cow."
Wow.
And so to
Wow.
her, I mean, that was her greatest asset she had was her cow. And it was like, no, 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 it'll be fine. I will sell my cow and I will get the money. And she said, I didn't have the heart to tell her that, what a hospital fee would cost if she flew to Florida, airline ticket, her visa and everything. And then it was at that time we started talking. So anyway, little Shalisa came up to Richmond, Virginia as one of our first cases. And now she's beautiful. She's 18 years old and she's just amazing. And so that being one of our first stories was just really special to me. And then another story was, as I was talking about Blounce, and I was down with this just phenomenal orthopedic team that we had down there, and they're rocking it. We had so many kids standing in line waiting to come in, and we had 3 rooms set up with the surgeons in the room to, look at their x-rays and talk with the families and all. And this little girl came in with her dad, and she was 12 years old, and she had severe, when she walked, her knees so severely bowed, her knees would hit the ground on both sides when she walked. And she had this dress on, and the dress would just drag on the floor, that if she was standing up, it probably would have hit at her knees. But she had the biggest smile on her face. And when I saw him come in, I didn't know what this disease was. I mean, now I really know, but at that point, that was the first time to ever see a little beautiful child walking in with that. And I grabbed my surgeon's arm, who was out going through some files, and I just grabbed his arm and I said, "Oh my God, please tell me we can help this little girl." And he turned around and he looked, he goes, "That's Bounce disease." He said, "Oh, we probably can." So I was like, I was all excited. And so we got them, registered and ready. And so the father was wonderful. He was a principal of a school. And when it was time for them to go in, I went in with them. I thought, I'm just going to stand in the back of the room. Because I just had to see these x-rays. I just couldn't imagine what this must look like. So the local surgeon and our surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, they had the x-rays up there, which were just unbelievable to look at. And they're talking and he's saying, "Well, we'll just cut here. This is what we do. We take this bone, we do whatever." And I see the father and of course I can see the daughter kind of scared as she's hearing this, but I look at the father and the father starts crying, just tears coming down his cheeks. And I thought, he must be scared. He must be scared. And so I kind of go over him. I said, "Are you okay? I said, you'll be able to talk to the doctors in a minute." And he just looked at me. He said, he goes, "I will do anything." He said, "I just don't want to walk down downtown with everybody pointing and laughing at my daughter anymore. And he said, and just to one day to say I can dance with her.
Oh,
And I mean, when we left, she was in full cast from her hips all the way down, completely straight legs, in so much bone pain. This poor child. I mean, but there again, she's amazing now. She's just amazing. I mean, and so I get to see them every once in a while. And the dad had said, yep, I've got to dance with my daughter. And
oh,
so
that
yeah,
just
those
me-
visual cases are just, when they're visually, a child, I love our heart cases too. I mean, it's such phenomenal stories with them because they're definitely not going to make it if their hearts aren't repaired. But you can't visually see, except for the fact that a lot of them their lips are blue because of the oxygen and all that. But just some of those orthopedic cases and neurosurgery cases and all that. It's just your heart to know that this child, had no access to anything and then just had to go through of just people pointing and laughing and just
Yeah.
all of that they had to go through was, and to think that you could fix that. You could just fix that.
Yeah.
Didn't have to be.
Yeah.
yeah.
Then it's like, then you got to do it. You just
Yeah.
have to do it.
You can't as a human being turn to blind
No,
eye to those things. When you could do something about it, we can't save
No.
everything.
no, we
But things
can't.
that we can, we have to do whatever we can. And what if you had any kind of words of wisdom for somebody that is listening, and it's like, I'm just a person, a house, a stay-at-home mom, living in a little town, but I want to make a difference, but I don't know what to do, or what is your advice?
Yeah. Well, I think first off, I want to say is you have to know that these parents love their children just like we do. And I think there's a lot of people who don't think that.
They don't
And they have aspirations, and it could be aspirations of their little Guatemala son taking over their farm one day
Yeah.
of 1 acre. I mean, it could be as much as that, but they have aspirations. It may not be that they want their child to get into Harvard, but they all do. They have dreams for their children. They want, they want them to live. They want them to be healthy and all. So I think first and foremost to know that these kids and all that are suffering, they've got families that don't want that to be. And the other is just, find what your interest is. Is it education? Is it children? Is it senior citizens? Is it whatever? And then maybe at that point, seek out for those groups maybe that are already doing something. And then it's kind of like internship. I always said internships, because that you're going to find where you want to land and what interests you. But I think even with volunteer for these organizations to find out. So I think more so that, I mean, as it's difficult from day one to open the doors and start something, but sometimes
see it through.
And see it
see it through, yeah, and stick it out and do it.
Stick it
And
out.
then, like you said, raise the money. And of course, if it's all that person does is, I believe in this, gee, I can't go to Africa, but by God, I can write a check and support that.
Exactly. We all
My
have
God,
a
that's,
role to play.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's an important, critical role for what we do.
Yeah.
So feel good
And
about that. And
you just hit the nail on the head, because again, one of the things that we really want to get across to people is find out what your gifts are.
yeah,
And then you're going to love what you do.
Yeah.
Find out what your gifts are, and you're going to love what you do.
so
Susan,
true.
we're so proud of you.
Hmm.
And
Proud of you, Ronna.
you have helped the world dance
Hmm.
in more ways than one.
Hmm.
And we just cannot thank you enough for giving us the time today and sharing what you did and sharing your heart and giving women and other people an example of what happens when somebody just gives their lives to serve people. And we just so appreciate what you have done. And only heaven will really fully tell us all of the people that you've impacted. And it's not about numbers at all.
Oh, it is not.
It's not about numbers, but it's about one child at a time, one operation at a time, one mother at a time. And what you have done is just extraordinary. And we are so thankful for the role model that you are, and for the legacy. You're really a pioneer as well, to go into a field that not a lot of people thought about as far as surgeries and helping people. So you've really been a pioneer.
Oh,
And
thank you.
we're just very, very grateful.
Well, I'm very honored. So I'm very,
And if
very
our
honored that, we all do our jobs that we do, not because you want any kind of
No.
adjunct at all. So
Mhm.
when these things, and you actually get to talk about it, and then someone say, gosh, that was a really good job. It's like, well, gosh, yeah, thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
But I'm just honored that I'm your number 3 on your
And-
podcast.
well, you moved way up today.
And if our listeners want to know a little bit more about what you talked about, maybe they have that passion, where could they go to find out more information?
On World Pediatric Project at www.worldpediatricproject.org.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Well,
Best
we
starting
wanna
place.
Yeah, we want to encourage our listeners that have that desire to get involved with that great organization
Yeah.
to do so. And Susan, we want to have you back, and your legacy will live on. We also look forward to hearing from people in our circles that have said, I heard that interview and it sparked something in me.
Yeah.
And so we really pray that will happen. And God bless you in your retirement, and a newlywed,
Oh,
pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Newlywed and a new grandchild.
Well, then
Life is good.
you're loving life, and your legacy will live on. And we just really, really, really thank you for just bringing it all home today. And so we're really, really looking forward to seeing just the fruits of this interview, what it will do to
Yeah.
change even more lives. So God bless you, and let's keep in touch.
Let's do. Love
and
that.
instead of letting it to go another 10
I,
years
right.
or more, and we can get the bell bottoms out one day.
You
And
betcha.
I'd like to see
And the-
you all do a little
And the
cheerleading.
Kelly, we can do it. We can do it. Kelly Green and White.
Oh,
well, listen, thanks a million,
All
and
right.
give our best to your family, and we're just going to be bragging on you, and thanking you for all that you have done, but how your legacy will live on forever and ever in the lives of children and families.
Thank you. And God bless the children of the world.
Amen. Thanks.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Great interview by Susan Rickman. Oh boy. And the story she told of the little girl with the bowed legs and the father who was always, so hurt by everyone making fun of her, and he said, I just want to dance with her. I mean, that just teared us up, didn't it?
Man.
It just, there's a wonderful song that it just made me think of by Leanne Womack. And I don't know who wrote the lyric, but it's one of the greatest lyrics. And I want to just share a little bit with you. I hope you dance. I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. You get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger. May you never take on one single breath for granted. God forbid love ever leave you empty-handed. I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. When one door closes, I hope one more opens. Promise me that you'll give faith a fighting chance. And when you get the chance to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. And that's what we want. We just hope. That's our hope for you guys, and our hope for ourselves.
Let's dance.
Let's dance. Let's
have
enjoy life.
fun.
Let's
Yeah,
celebrate.
Let's celebrate.
And so that's what we want to encourage everyone today. We want everyone to dance, and we want to help other people dance. Maybe particularly women who are struggling and hurting, and that's why we're here. So tell people how they can help. And
well, as always, please like us on
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Share us, leave some reviews on Apple or Spotify. And as always, go to www.thebagladyshow.com where you can buy a bag, help a cause, and change a life.
And because it is National Tortilla Chip Day, Chip Dip Day,
Chip dip.
Chip Dip Day, we have a cooking segment with an adorable kid with our Cooking with Kids segment.
Yes.
And so we're going to break it away now, and you're going to love this segment and learn about a really good tortilla chip dip.
That's right. So grab a bag of tortilla chips and some dip and join us. Hello and welcome to Cooking with Kids and the Bag Lady Show. This is my buddy Christian. Hello, Christian.
Hello, guys.
So, Christian, do you know what today is?
It's Friday.
Well, okay. It is National Tortilla Chip Day.
I know.
And so, guess what we're going to make today?
We're gonna mix this. What just she said?
Some dip to go with some chips?
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so what do we have here?
Cream cheese.
Do you know what cream cheese is?
It's called like a cheese
And do you know why it's called cream cheese?
because it's cream and it's cheese.
Well, you're so smart. How do you know all this?
Because I've been learning from everything.
Okay, so see how it's all creamy? What we
Yeah.
did was we let this sit out for about an hour so that it could kind of soften up. Now we're going to put that in the bowl. And then we're just going to open that up. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah.
Woo! Good job. Now just pour that in here, kiddo. Here.
All right. Thank you.
Do you know what this is that you're pouring in here?
What?
This is Hormel chili, no beans. All right? No beans. Okay, thank you. There you go. Okay. Now, Christian is going to, have you ever blended before, Christian?
Yes, I
You
did
have?
it one time.
All
with
right.
my mom.
Well, this is his second time blending, folks. Let's see how we go. Yeah. Get that cream cheese nice and mixed up with all that chili. So it looks like our device broke. So we're going to go to manual labor. Okay.
I think it's ready, Coach, to put it back in.
Okay, I'm gonna just give it another stir so that
Before
it
we
can
do it
all
again.
mix up really, really well. You wanna help? Why don't you give it a stir? That's what you're here for, my chef Christian. There you go. Get it all good and mixed up. Perfect. And now all we do is we warm it up either in the microwave or on the stove. So,
How long will it be?
microwave.
Microwave.
Yeah, let's do the microwave. All right, let's do it for 2 minutes. What do you think? You gonna eat some tortilla chips on National Tortilla Chip Day?
Yep.
All right, I think we should try this out and eat some. What do you think?
I think it would be delicious.
Delicious. Me too. I hope so because we want to share this recipe with everybody.
Yep.
And we want you to share your recipes with us. Please go to thebagladyshow.com and share some of your recipes, and maybe we can make them on the show. Oh, yeah. All right. Nice and warm. Okay, you ready to try this out? Oh, let's try this final product. We'll pour it into a bowl, make it look a little bit more pretty and appetizing. You got the chips?
Yep.
All right. Fire away. Let's see what you think. How is it?
It's good.
I like it. You think it's good? Mm-hmm. It works for Tortilla Chip Day? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Christian. Love
You're
having
welcome.
you here, baby. Come back, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Christian is so adorable.
I love that kid. He's
He
so
brings
adorable.
so much joy.
We're going to have him back. More cooking with Christian.
Anything with Christian.
And we're going to post the recipe online. And if you have some favorite recipes, please go to thebagladyshow.com and let us know what your recipes are. And I don't know, we might just have a Bag Lady Show cookbook.
We may.
I think we probably
We
will.
may cook your recipe, all of the above. It sounds fun. We're
Yeah.
a tribe. Let's join in together and have some fun.
Yes. And I want to close our time together with a famous quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Whew.
And he says this: the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Great quote.
And in doing so, the happiness will just follow.
Purpose, happiness.
Yeah.
Great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the program. Let's all join in the dance of life. Let's crush compassion this week.
All
and
right.
remember,
Buy a bag,
help a cause,
change a life.